What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz, running a little crazy, chicken with my head cut off today a little bit, going from work to an event, then right back here. But I'm here. That's the late start. Every once in a while, these are going to be a little bit late because of that, because life gets in the way. But man, do we have a lot to talk about. And I mean a lot to talk about. Today was an eventful day. It started with seeing tweets about the SEC telling Oklahoma to whack non-conference games next year and in 2024 and future years. But the important part being next year in 2024 with SEC opponents, which got everybody thinking, okay, the SEC's prepping this for an early exit, right? Here it comes, 2023. OU and Texas are leaving. And then we find out it wasn't really about that. Further reporting reveals that it was much more about likely just the SEC trying to get their schedule in order, and it's not actually about Texas and Oklahoma leaving early, unless you want to be very conspiratorial. We shall see. But that's barely even a blip on the radar. I mean, we will talk about it. I'll give you the full details and the reports that we had from all the different corners of college football reporting world today, but that's not really the headline here. The headline here has been a flurry of news that has come out about the Pac-12 TV deal and ESPN. And by that, I mean lack thereof. That they apparently are very, very, very far apart. Hundreds of millions of dollars apart, in fact. And now the Pac-12 spin has been, well, that means they're going streaming, Amazon or Apple. We'll give you that info. The spin from Andrew Marchand, who is one of the sports media experts in the country from the New York Post, has been more like, the Pac-12 needs to create some leverage. They're in some trouble here. They could get poached by the Big 12. So different ends of the spectrum there on what this actually means. So there's a lot of ground to cover there. Obviously, we have games. We have a very interesting slate of games once again in the Big 12 this week. We have coaches being asked about the Nebraska job. Two Big 12 coaches, to my knowledge, I only saw two. Two Big 12 coaches got asked about being linked to the Nebraska head coaching job. So there is a lot. There is a lot going on. And I still feel like my note sheet has about 5 or 6 other things that I'm not even getting to. Let me run oh yeah, we have TV info from the Baylor BYU game that just accentuates the points that we have been making about the TV value of the Big 12 this whole time. I still haven't gotten to John Canzano's report and response to Brett Yormark's comments from Pac-12 country. And, I wanted to throw in a little note about how down bad right now the ex-Big 12 schools are, because all 4 of them are having a pretty rough go of it at the moment. We have a hilarious Scott Frost anecdote. If we have time to get to that, Scott Frost related anecdote. So there is almost too much today, folks. There is almost too much to get to. And this comes on a day where, Twitter was a trip. I was fighting with, let's see, who all was on the list today? Pat Forty, Missouri fans, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I think that might be the list for today, but it was a day, folks. It was a day. But I'm glad that you're here. Thank you for being here. And as always, I just rattled off all the topics there, but we can go where you want to go. You guys can control some of the chat here tonight, and that is by donating, clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you donate to get your question or comment on the channel here. Cuts through everything else, supersedes everything else in the chat, tacks it up at the top for me, makes it nice and simple. And that is how you make your voice heard here on this channel and support the work that I'm doing and bringing you Big 12 content week in and week out, Sundays, Wednesdays, a little bit in between here on the channel. If you are watching this taped and not live, you can always support the channel on Venmo as well. It is John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo to do so. So we are off and running. The table is set for the show tonight. What's up, Calico Willie? I see Calico Willie in with a donation. Calico Willie says, hey, John, I hope that Ward had Cade Warner run stadiums after those penalties on Saturday. It was a great game experience, though. Mob is back, Ema. Yeah, look, Cade Warner is, first of all, Kurt Warner's son. If you've seen pictures on Twitter of Kurt Warner at K-State football games, that is why. Cade Warner is also a fellow Nebraska transfer, much like Adrian Martinez and Will Honus, a couple of players that K-State has on the roster. Yes, very frustrating penalty. The offensive pass interference, I think you got to try a little bit harder to sell that, and it wiped out what would have been a great play down the sideline to Deuce Vaughn. But Cade Warner is a very valued leader on that team. He's one of the captains. So I'm sure punishment wasn't – he's not – I don't think you need to worry about it being a long-term thing. I understand the frustration. I was certainly frustrated when the penalties happened, but I don't think it's going to be a long-term deal. with Cade Warner there, and he does bring a lot to the team. So I will defend him in that respect. And as far as the atmosphere at the Bill, aka Bill Snyder Family Stadium, let me read you this. I literally just saw before I came on from Power Mizzou. Says Connor Tollison on the environment at K-State, factoring into false start penalties on Saturday. Quote, "It was loud. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it wasn't. Loudest environment I've ever been in." So there you go. From an SEC player, loudest environment he's ever been in was in Manhattan, Kansas. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad for a place that Pat Forty called a dump today in his latest column. Thus, the fighting with Pat Forty and K-State putting out a specific video targeted at Mr. Forty today. So, like I said, it's been very eventful today. But thank you for being here, Calico Willie. Thank you for the donation. I appreciate it a lot. If you want to join the party, much like Jake, who I'm going to get to in just a second, you can click the $ below the chat box where it says say something to donate with your question or comment to make your voice heard on the chat tonight. Great one, Jake. Thank you for the donation, and thank you for being here. Jake says Big 12 After Dark had more than 2.4 million viewers. Could this time slot become a marquee slot for the Big 12? This should help grant of rights negotiations. You are correct, my friend, and thank you for leading me into one of the topics today. As a Baylor and BYU, as you mentioned, did a massive number in that time slot on ESPN. And it's not just that number. I have some context for you that is going to accentuate just how good that number was for Baylor and BYU. So they get 2.4 million viewers with a game that started at 10:35 Eastern time on ESPN. Again, tough for your boy who was on Eastern time in Indianapolis on Saturday. But 2.4 million, man. We saw all those charts and the numbers from like the Stuart Mandells of the world that would point out that like in that Pac-12 After Dark slot, they're consistently getting over 1 million viewers. That was always it. Like they're getting 7 figures, over 1 million viewers because you have no other Power 5 competition in that time slot. So it becomes a lot easier there to draw a number no matter who is playing. And even the Washington States of the world were doing pretty well in that time slot. How about the fact that BYU and Utah and BYU and Arizona State only had 1.5 million views in that window last year? Almost a solid million more for Baylor playing BYU than Utah or Arizona State. Now, I realize Utah and Arizona State are a part of the formula here that, you know, would potentially be coming to the Big 12 if things worked out the way that we want them to. However, they're currently in the Pac-12, and this really just drives home that point that if you throw Baylor, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, like teams in the Big 12 that have become or been more relevant nationally into those time slots as opposed to Pac-12 schools, you're going to do better. You're going to draw better numbers. And not only that, schools that just have bigger fan bases that care more. You're not throwing Cal there, right? Where nobody wants to watch Cal. Nobody cares about Cal. Cal fans don't care about Cal. And so when you replace them with Big 12 schools that bring Big 12 fan bases, resources, et cetera, you're going to draw better numbers. Now, that has not even been totally disputed by even the Pac-12 propagandists out there among us, but the issue has always been, well, they say, well, the Pac-12 has these slots and the Big 12 doesn't. But if you can get more data points out there this year, and this year is more important than just it being the most recent time, it's the fact that it's a time when both the Big 12 and the Pac-12 are talking with the TV partners. Like the Pac-12 in a little more heated fashion right now, but the Big 12 also is too. And that's what we found out from Brett Yormark in the league. What's that been, about 2 weeks ago now at this point? Everybody's talking to the TV network. So when they can float out there, oh, by the way, you guys put Baylor and BYU, which will be a future conference matchup out there in that late time window, and it did 1 million more viewers than BYU versus current Pac-12 members. That's pretty good. And everybody needs some leverage right now. You need bullets in the chamber. You need to be able to throw that out at TV networks. And the thing that I love about it is that not only did we find out that number, but we found it out in part because the Big 12 tweeted it out there. The Big 12 is continuing to be active and pushing these numbers out there on social media and fighting the narrative battles. Fighting basically like the Big 12 is fighting for itself again. These have furthered narratives that I've been pushing for a while, which is one, the Big 12 would generate a lot of money and do better for these TV networks in these late windows if they could pull the four corner schools and be able to do this regularly. And then two, the thing that I love the most about Brett Yormark's new Big 12 is that they are fighting for themselves and trying to get out in front of these narratives and form the narratives themselves, as opposed to just waiting waiting for everybody else to form the narratives. The Big 12 is going after it and being aggressive, and I love that. So everything about that, Jake, I love. I love the number that it did. I love the game that it was. I know college kickers and all that, but it was a very entertaining game. And I love the fact that it reflects well in the Big 12 in the end with the TV number that comes out here. Little disappointed that we didn't get a Stuart Mandel article about it, but I guess we'll live to fight another day on that front. Look, I should stop myself there. I've already taken on one national college football journalist today. I don't need to make it two. But yes, that was very good news, because I'm going to read you a little bit from Andrew Marchand in just a minute. And if you want to, I would suggest waiting until after this chat, but you can go to my Twitter account, JL Kurtz. And on my Twitter feed, you can find the actual video of Andrew Marchand from the New York Post, who does, really, he is the guy on sports media things. He breaks every major sports media story that's out there. He says ESPN and the Pac-12 are hundreds of millions of dollars apart. And as a part of that, he gets into the problem here is the Pac-12 has no leverage. And he's like, that'll be an issue for the Pac-12 and to a certain extent, the Big 12 as well. You need leverage. And this is a leverage point, maybe not so much necessarily with the TV networks as it is to take it to the four corner schools and be like, look, we know right now you're hundreds of millions of dollars apart on ESPN. We know that 2.4 million people watch this, Big 12 after dark, this game in this time slot. Now maybe you can blend these two together. We have this bullet in the chamber to take to the TV networks. You guys now know if you play these games, people are going to watch. Let's all just bring this together. Make a nice, happy little marriage of everybody. Come to the Big 12, throw some Big 12 after dark in that time slot consistently. We will do better than the Pac-12. That's a case that you can start making now. And you know that Brett Yormark is trying to make it because, again, we saw the response from the Big 12's own social media accounts, getting that out there and making sure that information was out there and well circulated. And it can't hurt that the Big 12 is strapped up when it comes to Twitter. We have learned, Pac-12 Twitter has found this out. Pac-12 writers have found this out. Big 12 Twitter is ready to fight, man. Big 12 Twitter is ready to tell you just how great this conference is and how much we love this conference. And they're going to be ready to help spread things like that. You can call it Big 12 propaganda if you want, but really it is the truth that Big 12 schools will perform better in that time slot. So it's just a matter of getting there. All told, very good stuff. Very good stuff for the Big 12. And BYU and Baylor put on a show in terms of an entertaining game. Maybe not the most well-played game in the world, but an entertaining game. And that certainly helps out too. A game that went down to the wire. That helps pulling in viewers also. Even if it is people who are just asleep on their hotel bed like me at the end of that game. But appreciate the donation there. Snake. What's up, Snake? That's a new one. Haven't heard that, but I like the name. I love it when you guys have creative names. Snake. He says, I'm a UCF fan that didn't grow up with the Big 12. Thanks for helping me integrate into the new conference. When did UCF first pop up on your and the Big 12's radar? Well, welcome, Snake, and welcome, UCF. I feel for you guys. It was a tough L the other day. I was disappointed to see that. But I believe big time in UCF. I was just talking to someone the other day on Twitter who was mentioning to me, I think it was after that news came out about the 2.4 million for Baylor BYU. And they were like, maybe if the Big 12 would have known that it would do that well, they would have gone for San Diego State instead of UCF. And I said, man, why UCF? Why does UCF get attacked there? I still think UCF has unlimited potential based on how young they are as a program, all these things you guys know, being in Florida, et cetera, et cetera. When did UCF first pop onto my radar? Well, I'll tell you when I started to really fall in love with UCF and just take more notice of them, notice UCF Twitter, notice that fan base. It was 2017. It was claiming the national championship in 2017. It was not so much going undefeated. It was claiming the national championship. I loved the brazenness of UCF to do that. And when you talk about marketing, again, which I am a marketing professional these days, that is the day job. And I see what Brett Yormark is trying to do in marketing the Big 12. I can appreciate a good marketing job. And regardless of what you think of the validity of UCF claiming themselves the 2017 national champions, that was a hell of a marketing job that generated a lot of publicity and just put them on the radar. People like me that I knew, I'm a college football fan. I watched them. I knew they were a good team. I knew about Shaquille Griffin, that whole story. But when I saw that, I was like, I love these guys. I love that. Like, you were undefeated. You didn't get a shot because the system is kind of screwed up. Go put it on billboards, put it on your stadium, whatever. That's fine. I love it. I love fighting the power. And that's really what they did. And so I think that was a really good way to market themselves. As far as when did they come on my radar for the coming to the Big 12, it was probably, what day was that? Was it like the middle of July or late July when Texas and Oklahoma left? Probably like an hour after that happened. It was like, okay, what do we do now? And it was very clear at that point that UCF was one of the four best squads that were out there to go add to the Big 12. So that's what I would say. I'm excited to have UCF in the conference. I would love to go see a game in the Bounce House. I'm excited to go watch a game in the Bounce House. We welcomed UCF into Manhattan, Kansas, in front of like a scary torrential storm back in 2010. So I'd like to go get the return trip on that one and go play out in your neck of the woods. So thank you for being here, Snake. Much appreciate that. Joe, what's up, Joe? Joe says, I'm telling you, John, it's going to be K-State and Oklahoma State in Dallas in early December. I would love it. I'm not going to fight that, Joe. I'm not going to fight that at all. I think that would be really fun. The only thing I don't like about that, to be honest with you, Joe, is that Chris Klieman has struggled against Oklahoma State. He has not had much luck against the Cowboys. So I just have a lot of bad memories of playing Oklahoma State here recently. I think the last good one that I had was at the Byron Pringle game in 2017. There has not been a lot to go around for K-State in terms of success against Mike Gundy and company lately. So that's the only thing I worry about K-State's chances to win that game. But if they're in the game, I'll be thrilled. I'll be very happy with that. And hey, I think based on early returns, it's a plausible enough scenario, right? Plausible enough scenario that would be the game that you get. I think Texas deserves respect, and Texas deserves to be obviously mentioned in this conversation right now, but they're going to have to prove to me that they can be consistent in these games that they should win, especially without Quinn Ewers and now with Hudson Card, before I'm going to totally get on board with that. And we will find a lot more out when conference play starts. I mean, K-State, we found out this week, K-State, Oklahoma is going to be at 7 o'clock on Fox next week. So primetime, network TV, Oklahoma, K-State. Sooners looked pretty shaky last week, especially for a half against Kent State. We'll find out if they have their house fully in order, and we'll find out if K-State is going to have to continue to hide Adrian Martinez, which is kind of what's been happening through the first couple weeks of the season, or if it really has been more just circumstantial, like has been the message coming out of K-State. And I can buy the case that it has been, but I need to go see Adrian Martinez do enough to go win a game like that. We'll find out. We'll find out a lot there as far as my Cats are concerned. But it was a nice weekend with the 40-12 victory over Mizzou. Jay Rodriguez, what's up, Jay Rodriguez? Thank you for being here, and thank you for the donation. Jay Rodriguez says, congrats to Texas Tech on their win over my Cougs. Thank you for your work, John. Well, I appreciate that, Jay. Thank you. And how about that? Being a really gracious in defeat, man. Respect for you, Jay Rodriguez. That is not easy, especially when, here on this channel, we've had some fun smack talk back and forth between the Red Raiders and the Cougs. And man, for Houston, that's a tough one. I mean, that is a game that Texas Tech, it really felt like had lost the game in the second half. You had the pick six from Donovan Smith. Then you had the other interception that gets run back for the field goal at the end of regulation. It was just like so many things happened there in the second half where I was like, this feels like it's Houston's for the taking. And obviously they did not take it. And Donovan made a play to go win the game. So that's a tough one. That's a really tough pill to swallow, I think, if you're Houston. And now, I would just tell you this, Jay Rodriguez, I'm sure Houston fans are now in a mode where they have a lot more respect for Kansas, because that respect has come pretty fast over the last couple of weeks with what they've done to start this season and the offseason hype that was building for what Lance Leipold has done. But that's not going to be easy. That is not going to be easy, I don't think, this weekend. So tough spot to rebound for Dana Holgorsen and company. And we'll see. That is one of the games I'm actually very intrigued to watch. I know the national college football slate this weekend is going to get a bad rap. Like, there's not that much going on, but I still think there's a ton of interesting things happening in the Big 12 this weekend. Kansas, Houston being one of those games. Future conference opponent, future conference matchup. Kansas on the rise, Kansas on the come up. Houston with huge expectations this year. Disappointing loss. Again, a game that they probably should have won at Texas Tech. And now, can you rebound against a team that with the logo on the side of the helmet is not going to get you very fired up? But that is a mistake this year with what Kansas brings to the table. Boom to the Sooner. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, my friend? Thank you for being here. Thank you for the donation. Boom to the Sooner says, why do you think Scott Frost was so good at UCF and not at Nebraska? And will he get another job? He'll get another job. I know that right now Scott Frost is basically a meme. And I know that he is he went through one of the most disastrous coaching tenures at a major school that we have perhaps ever seen. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. Not taking Nebraska to a bowl game. That is not good. Not good. But I still think he will get another job eventually. It's just going to have to, he'll probably, maybe he goes through the Nick Saban rehabilitation program where he rehabs his image as a coach, becomes a coordinator, works his way back up, a la Lane Kiffin, Bill O'Brien, all these guys that have done that same sort of thing. Either that or he goes and becomes a coordinator somewhere. I still think the guy probably can be a good coordinator. I think everything that came along with being a head coach, the pressure at Nebraska, there is an argument to be made for just too much pressure at Nebraska. But I would think he's got to do a lot of reevaluating here and what's going on. There might be something too. I've seen this theory floated out, and you guys that are fans of the incoming schools from the AAC, maybe have a better grasp on this, but I've seen the theory floated out there that AAC coaches moving on to Power 5 jobs has not gone very well lately. So there is maybe some kind of dynamic in the AAC in terms of schools that are a little ahead of the curve relative to the rest of the league in terms of resources and talent and all that it would be a little bit easier to build up and dominate there. I think Luke Fickell would have a lot of success if he went and took a Power 5 job. Obviously, he's going to be in a Power 5 job in Cincinnati, but if he took a Big Ten or an SEC job, I think he could still have plenty of success. But that's one theory I've seen floated. It's hard to explain. I mean, he wasn't at UCF as the head coach all that long, but it was only 2 years prior, right, that they were winless before he turns that thing back around and has them undefeated. I mean, you can't do that without some level of coaching chops, no matter what the cupboard was that was left for you. So I'm not sure that I have a great answer for all that. And by the way, speaking of intriguing things this weekend, we've got Oklahoma, Nebraska. And all of a sudden, Nebraska, I would think with a weight lifted off their shoulders, less pressure, interim coach. For these guys, now they can just go play loose and free. They don't have to worry about getting their coach fired. There's probably less pressure in those late game situations because you're just not thinking about all those things like, am I going to get my coach fired with this sort of performance? So I think there's a lot of reason to think that can be an interesting game. And again, Oklahoma was sluggish last week. So don't write that one off. Don't write that one off. Zach, thank you for the donation, Zach, and thank you for being here. Zach says, don't let this Pac-12 BS distract you from the fact that future Big 12 champion Cincy has a chance to take the all-time series lead in the Victory Bell rivalry with Miami of Ohio on Saturday. Go UC. Well, hey, speaking of the AAC and those schools and Luke Fickell, Zach coming in strong with some Cincinnati talk. I appreciate that a lot, Zach, because I know we have some Cincinnati followers and fans of this channel, but I feel like not been real vocal. We haven't heard a ton from the Cincinnati fans here in the live chat. So you got to rep it, Zach, and I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. I didn't realize, it makes sense, being that, both schools are in the state of Ohio, but I didn't realize that was a trophy game or rivalry game, Victory Bell rivalry between Cincinnati and Miami, Ohio. So go get it. Go get it, man. Take that away. I am all for it. Love to see that for Cincy. Was hoping they'd get that win at Arkansas, but a really hard-fought effort there. Go get it done. Shout out to Zach. Shout out to the Bearcats. Shout out to Luke Fickell, who is definitely not going to Nebraska. I can tell you that. Some of this Nebraska smoke that they want Fickell and Aranda and Urban Meyer. I do not think that's going to happen for the old Huskers. So shout out to you, Zach. Thank you for being here, and go Cincy. Christian, I see Christian says, who you got in BYU at Oregon? Boy, that's a tough game. That is a tough game for me to decipher here because for BYU, you are coming off of the high of winning that game against Baylor that so many people saw, and it was a much hyped matchup. It sounds like may get those wide receivers back, so be closer to full strength, which I think would make it a big difference. But can you recapture that sort of energy? And now you're going on the road into a tough environment. that's a tricky spot. It's a tricky spot. And I know that everybody will look at it and say, like, oh, Oregon, people will be quick to write Oregon off. I can understand why, because of the drubbing that they took at the hands of Georgia. But I think Oregon is not that bad. I think it may just be that Georgia's the best damn team in the country again. And so I think you'll get a better effort out of Oregon. I expect a really close game, a really tight game. I'm going to be a Big 12 homer, and I will lean slightly toward BYU, but it certainly wouldn't shock me to see Oregon win the game. And you guys know I'll be pulling very, very hard for BYU, and all Big 12 fans should be pulling very, very hard for BYU in that matchup. Because I think there's like a little bit of fringe talk about this right now, BYU in the college football playoff. But if they win that game at Oregon and they go back-to-back weeks beating top 10 Baylor and then going on the road to Austin and beating Oregon, now with the rest of the schedule that they have, which is very strong, that conversation is going to open up. Like, hey, Cincinnati last year, they just had the Indiana and Notre Dame thing, and they got to the college football playoff by going undefeated. You've still got a game against Arkansas. You've still got a game against Notre Dame. There's Boise left on the schedule, and I know Boise's not quintessential Boise this year, and obviously Notre Dame is not quintessential Notre Dame, but there's enough juice there that BYU can absolutely become a part of that college football playoff conversation. And I think that talk will start more in earnest if they win this game against Oregon this week. So very much looking forward to it. And I'm seeing people pointing out that the line is like BYU's a 3.5-point dog. Yeah, I think I would definitely, I feel that feels to me like a field goal kind of game. Like I could see that being a field goal type of game there. BYU is no stranger to playing Pac-12 teams and playing Pac-12 teams very well, very effectively. I don't think they'll be too bothered and too intimidated by that environment out there. So really looking forward to that game. I mean, how about that? We're sitting here talking about great games. How about that game? I was just looking at that. What time do we have on that game? We've got, that's in the 2:30 window. Well, that sucks. K-State's playing at 2 against Tulane, but I will keep tabs on that as much as I can on Saturday. That's a game that I need after dark. Why can't I get BYU Oregon after dark, please? And thank you, Ron. What's up, Ron? Thank you for being here. Thanks for the donation, Ron. Ron says, although it hurts, congrats Tech on your win. Go Cougs. Very gracious in defeat. How about that? Texas Tech fans, we can appreciate that, right? Cactus Mafia, Cacti Mafia. We can appreciate the fact that Houston fans are being very gracious in defeat here on the channel today, right? I certainly do. So, Ron, I know that was a tough one to take. You got a tough turnaround here against Kansas. Trickier game than you thought it would be at the beginning of the schedule. Best of luck to you guys this weekend. And thank you for being here on the channel. And thank you for being very nice in defeat there. I know that is, I certainly am not good at doing that at all in any way, shape, or form. So I can appreciate it when I do see that. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, Boom to the Sooner? Once again, thank you, sir. Boom to the Sooner says, adding Oklahoma and Kansas State continue winning. Will you be in Norman for the showdown between OU and KSU? So here's a sad story. Boom to the Sooner. I had a ticket purchased for me. Fortunately and unfortunately, because this will be a cool event. And I can't give you too many details on it yet, but I think we will have details that I'll be announcing on social media soon. But the K-State podcast that I do called Three Ma, we are going to be doing a live show at a bar in Aggieville in Manhattan for the Oklahoma game. And that all came about, like, we had talked about it. I didn't know for sure whether or not it was happening. And I had a buddy buy me a ticket to the Oklahoma game in Norman. I was going to go. But then I found out we're doing this live show. So I'll be there. I will be in Aggieville in Manhattan, driving from Kansas City to go to that. And unfortunately, will not be in Norman. Wish that I could be there. I mean, last chance to go see K-State play in Norman in all likelihood. I would love to be there. And to be able to do it as a fan, I've only done that once in my life. I covered the 2012 game, the 2014 game, the 16 game, the 18 game. Not 20. So I've covered 4 K-State Oklahoma games in Norman. As a professional, I broadcasted one as a student, the student radio station. That was in 2009. And then as a child in 1997, my father took me to Norman, Oklahoma to go watch the game as a fan. So I've only watched, of the 7 times I've been to Norman for a K-State Oklahoma game, only once has it been purely as a fan to sit in the stands. So I very much wish that I could do that. Unfortunately, it's not going to work out, but it will be really cool to do this live show with the podcast. So I cannot complain too much. It's a very good reason to be missing it. But unfortunately, I would have loved to have met you, my friend. Would have loved to have said, hey, hopefully if Oklahoma does wind up sticking around next year and you're coming back around to Manhattan, you just let me know. First round is on me, good sir. First round is on me. Probably like 10 rounds on me. I owe you. I owe you a few. But thank you for being here, Boom to the Sooner, and what you contribute to the channel and this community. Brandon, thank you for being here. Brandon says, and the donation. Brandon says, how big would it be for Big 12 superiority if BYU beats Oregon this weekend after going 5-0 against the Pac-12 last year, including a win against Utah? It would be huge. I mean, BYU's come up the last couple of years. And when I say come up, I don't mean like BYU was never a program of this stature. Obviously, they have been, and they have a wealth of history. But they have been much more in the national spotlight here over the last couple of years, going back to like Zach Wilson. So BYU, I feel like, has garnered a lot of attention, and yeah, it just perfectly shapes and fits the narrative where a lot of people look down upon the Big 12 for like adding these 4 schools and like, oh, I mean, I've been hearing it from Missouri fans in my mentions all week, even after getting just pounded by K-State on Saturday. Like, oh, you guys play in the Mountain West, whatever. All right, look, BYU is out here just taking no prisoners and beating up on the Pac-12. And we have butted heads so often now with the Pac-12 propaganda machine and all of that. It definitely helps to have one of your incoming schools really beating up on the Pac-12. And now you're going after the most prominent member remaining, the most prominent member left standing in the Pac-12. If you can go win in their house, go win in Autzen, yeah, that's going to be a nice statement. That would be a great statement to have. So not that now, do I think that makes some like tangible difference in TV contracts, or like Arizona State watches that and says, well, that's it. BYU's crushing Oregon. We have to go to the Big 12. No, I don't think it really like impacts that necessarily, but it certainly is satisfying, and it certainly helps. It certainly helps your national perception. If BYU can legitimately like make a run at this thing and be involved in the playoff discussion for much of the year, and then last year you had Cincinnati, and then next year everybody's jumping into the Big 12, like that's really good publicity and helping with narrative forming, because we've seen, I push this all the time, but I've just watched it throughout my lifetime, how poorly the Big 12 did at shaping narratives and projecting strength. That will be a factor in projecting strength for the new conference when these new schools come in here, because some people would look at it and say like, well, great in the AAC when you didn't have to play Power 5 schools every week. Can you really hack it? Can you really handle it? That would help shield some of that, being like, look, these teams have done it the last couple of years at the highest of levels. And BYU's, I mean, yeah, if they get through that schedule this year, unbeaten or close to it, I think it will garner a hell of a lot of respect nationally for sure. Jay Rodriguez says, yes, I'm very concerned about the KU game. Yeah, I look, if I'm being honest with you, Jay Rodriguez, like basically anybody in the Big 12, I think all of a sudden should be at least very leery of the Kansas game, because you have this combination this year where Kansas is certainly starting to generate a lot of respect around the league and around the country for the turnaround job that Leipold has done already. But I think still to like players, to 18 to 22-year-old college kids, especially those that have been around, if you've been in this league for a while, Kansas has just been a punching bag. I mean, it's been a bye week. You haven't had to worry about showing up. It has not mattered. And you'll still go out there and win the game. Now that's not the case, but yet you still have that residual like, oh, I see the Jayhawk on the side of the helmet. These guys can't really bring it. They can't do it. So it's this mashup of like Kansas is much better, but the perception among players probably has not caught up yet. And as much as the coaches will try and beat that into them throughout the week, I imagine that'll still be a tough task for a lot of people this year. And now this is a team capable of beating you. So it's a really difficult combination there. And Houston obviously will face that this week. Garrett, thank you for the donation, Garrett. Garrett says, ability to drive second round conference games. What a concept. RIP. Be honest, Garrett, I'm not, if I'm missing it, let me know. I'm not 100% sure what you're referencing there. Ability to drive. Oh, okay. Ability to drive to, I was thinking second round. Ability to drive to road conference games. What a concept. RIP. Yes. Gotcha, Garrett. Gotcha. Yes, that is one of the that is a casualty, unfortunately, of conference realignment in large part. And, playing Mizzou this past weekend for K-State, like that was so fun. And K-State plays at Mizzou next year. I'm really looking forward to going to the game in Columbia. I miss that. I mean, playing Colorado, playing Nebraska, like drivable road trips. It is very fun. It makes the game more fun. And I don't know. We've jumped the shark on some of that, unfortunately. McMuffin, what's up, McMuffin? McMuffin, thank you for the donation. Thank you for being here. McMuffin says, I would like to live in a world that had the Bearcats and BYU making consecutive college football playoffs before joining the Big 12. Sick 'em. I want to live in that world too, McMuffin. We're all hoping for it. I think all of us here on this channel really are pulling for it. And it would be the best possible thing really that could happen to this league, is having those schools go on and do that. It would also be very nice, by the way, if Houston could rip through the AAC and win the conference championship this year and, put themselves in contention perhaps for a New Year's Six Bowl. I know they lost the game to Texas Tech, but Houston finished the year strong last year. We've seen that they can come close to getting that done already last year under Dana Holgorsen. So pull the same kind of thing this year, and that would really help. And then, hey, UCF, I know that was a disappointing loss, and last year was fairly disappointing, although still certainly not a bad season. But UCF has set a really high standard here. Yeah, everybody winning as much as they can and being on the national stage and national platform as much as they can would really, really help. So great run of donations there, everybody. Appreciate that. We're not done. Got plenty of time left here. I'm going to start moving down the outline to get to some of the major topics today, but you are still more than welcome. If you want to dictate the conversation where it's going, get your question or comment in, click the $sign below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you do that and make your voice heard on the channel here tonight. Also, I have not said this yet. If you could like the video, I would appreciate that. Helps me with the YouTube algorithm, and it is free. Just one click. Just like the video. That would help me out a bunch. I would really appreciate it if you guys did that. And again, if you want to support the channel, click the $sign below the chat box where it says say something. That's how you support the channel and get your question or comment on here. Yeah. And John Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you are watching this later on, not live. That is another way that you can support. All right, so let me get to the Andrew Marchand. I guess I'll say report. It was really a clip from his podcast, but Andrew Marchand, the authority really on sports media. He breaks any kind of big major story of a sports media personality leaving and going somewhere else. He works with the New York Post. So he has a podcast. And it's actually been very interesting. They had it's like the number 2 guy at ESPN on fairly recently. And we talked about that here on this channel because he had some comments and some things to say about what's happening with Big 12, Pac-12 TV deals, conference realignment, all of that. But the headline from Andrew Marchand was that he said the Pac-12 and ESPN are hundreds of miles apart. That's a quote. Pac-12 and ESPN are, hundreds of millions apart. Hundreds of millions apart. I guess it could be hundreds of miles apart, but they are hundreds of millions of dollars apart on this TV deal. So the Pac-12 wants hundreds of millions more than what ESPN is willing to give them right now. And I know that the initial reaction there is to just take it, dunk on everybody. And I still think like that's fairly encouraging if you're a Big 12 fan, hoping that you can pick off some schools from the Pac-12. Fairly satisfying if you're a Big 12 fan that has been sitting here saying the Big 12 will be a more valuable entity and a better product to give to these TV partners. It also is not totally done because the Pac-12 spin on this will be, well, they're going digital. And that's what George has been doing. He's been trying to go digital. So that is going to be the spin here from the Pac-12, and I will get to some of that in a moment. And even Andrew Marchand admitted that could very well be a realistic possibility. But let me get to the rest of the bullet points here. He said it is likely that streaming could get involved. He said Apple in particular likes to overpay for things like this. And could they sell the Pac-12 on enough visibility? He said the Pac-12's issue right now is leverage, which doesn't mean a deal won't happen, but they're going to have to strengthen their hand. That was his words saying like they're going to have to strengthen their hand. And he said the Big 12 could try to pick off Pac-12 teams. He didn't say anything about the Pac-12 going the opposite way. He kind of finished that statement about they don't have much leverage. They need to strengthen their hand. He finished that statement with the Big 12 could go pick off Pac-12 schools. So neutral observer, a guy that's all about like the actual media numbers there, his only thought was, well, the Big 12 could pick off the Pac-12, not the other way around, and didn't give any real specific way that the Pac-12 could actually strengthen its hand when it comes to negotiating with ESPN. So, I took that to be fairly some validation, so to speak, for those of us here that have been pushing these same narratives and saying this for a while, that the Big 12 would be the more valuable entity, et cetera. So I think I was mildly encouraged by this. Now, I will say again that the Pac-12 response was, and this was actually written before that Andrew Marchand report came out, but John Wilner, who obviously is very connected in Pac-12 circles, John Wilner wrote an entire article about how Amazon could really be the partner here and that the Pac-12 is going to go digital with Amazon. Now, tomorrow, a lot of us are going to watch Chiefs Chargers. I know I'll be tuned into that. That's going to be the Amazon broadcast. And his whole article was focused around, like, pay attention to that, see how that goes. That's the future. And that's where George Kliavkoff is focusing his energy right now. They're trying to go down that road. Marchand was more talking about Apple. Wilner's more talking about Amazon. And the whole pitch with Amazon here is that they obviously have unlimited money. I think, like, we all kind of realize that. They have a ton of money, very deep purse. And their idea is not necessarily to generate like crazy ratings by pulling in the Pac-12. They're not doing it really for college football purposes. They're doing it to get more credit card information, to therefore have people suckered in to buy their toilet paper through Amazon. That was like, have people already familiar with Amazon, already have their info in Amazon. And so then it just makes it easier when they need to get toilet paper, body wash, whatever it might be that you're going to order off of Amazon, that you do it there. The issue then becomes visibility. Are you visible enough on the streaming networks? And does that make it worth it? Can you get enough money from the streaming networks? And if you do, are you visible enough? Because that is the problem. If you're not on, it is still, as much as we say like digital and streaming and all that is the future, the ratings, what do we always see in these ratings? And we talk about them here. It's when you're on major networks, competition obviously factors in too, but when you're on the major networks, your numbers do so much better. It's just about where you're at, where you're visible. And, Texas, Alabama on Fox does over 10.5 million. Obviously the brands are there, but it's also just on network TV. Like, even people still rocking the bunny ears can get Fox. That is still the biggest way to generate high numbers of viewership in today's day and age. We're moving more toward digital and streaming, and you have some entities there, but is it the smart way to go if that's going to be like the bulk of what you're trying to do? Or will that just bury you where no one's going to ever go out of their way? Like, the casual fans will not go out of their way to go find those games and watch it. I can read you some of what John Wilner said. He said, by this time next month, the Pac-12 and Amazon could be partners. He said multiple sources in the sports media industry, none of them affiliated with the Pac-12 offices or campuses, have told the hotline that Commissioner George Kliavkoff is serious about a media rights agreement with Amazon. Quote, George is focused on digital, a source explained recently, and it wasn't a reference to ESPN Plus. There's another George quote. I love all these George quotes. George is kicking you-know-what lately, and now here we have George is focused on digital. But he says, Kliavkoff hinted at the possibility during the Pac-12's preseason kickoff event in late July, explaining that a deal with one of the major digital media companies was highly likely. But 6 weeks later, some clarity has emerged. A multi-year partnership with Amazon is under consideration. Quote, it's smart, a second source said. They could get more money relative to their real media value with Amazon, which again does make sense. Like, Amazon, I could see being likely to overpay, to overspend here, and just want to have more people involved, trying to get into the live sports game, to just get everything like homogenized into one thing. I'm already here for my streaming, so I might as well use Amazon for everything else. Is the money and that trade-off worth any kind of visibility issues there? Let me get to that part here of the article. The exclusive window gives ESPN and Fox a chance to lock up the Pac-12's rights for another contract cycle, either separately or in combination. If no agreement is reached, the Pac-12 would take its inventory to the marketplace. The digital media giant attempted to... Okay, so here's an interesting piece of this. Amazon attempted to secure a piece of the Big Ten's inventory and made what industry sources described as a strong bid. But the Big Ten was hesitant to sign with Amazon due to concerns over visibility. Amazon Prime is not a mainstream distributor of live sports. It's not an easy click away for many fans who plop down on the couch and grab the remote. It's not a natural football viewing destination for 17-year-old recruits who want to watch on their phones. But that doesn't mean Prime won't be mainstream in a few years. I think the recruiting piece of that is pretty important there, that even with younger kids, it's tougher if you're a coach telling them, like, hey, we got this big game. We got a big game against UCLA this week. We got a big game against Cal. You better go watch it on Amazon Prime. You can't just say, no, go watch it on Fox or ESPN. It's a lot easier to do that. The fact that the Big Ten turned it down would show you that, I mean, like, yeah, there are real legitimate concerns there about what the visibility of it would be and how viable that would actually be. So if I'm the Pac-12, I think it's desperate times call for desperate measures. They obviously can't be picky in the same way that the Big Ten can, when you're signing that deal that is just monstrous and everybody is going to be basically doubling their media intake here. Yeah, you can be really picky and say, no, we're not going to mess around with that. Like, we'll take the best of the best. We'll get on every single network right now. But the Pac-12 may not have that option. The Big 12 may not have that option. I mean, we'll see. We'll see when it comes down to it. But interesting stuff there on where the Pac-12 is at right now with that TV deal. It at least seems like the high level propaganda we saw from Pac-12 country about they're going to be fine. Georgia's kicking butt. ESPN deal is going to be great. It seems like that is not the case. That ESPN, at least right now, is not giving into that at all. That would be the biggest takeaway of all for me. That the Pac-12 realizes that. I mean, if that's the reporting coming out of Wilner, the Pac-12 realizes that ESPN is not going to be the ticket, at least solely. They're going to have to do something else. They're going to have to get more creative than that. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, Boom to the Sooner? Boom to the Sooner says, I saw Tennessee and Georgia were instructed to cancel upcoming games with OU. Does that mean anything concerning a conference jump? Glad that you asked, Boom to the Sooner, because that is another one of the major talking points from today. Here's how the day started. So this was the first story or information that we saw on this front. Came from Pete Thamel of ESPN, National College Football Reporter. Pete Thamel said, sources, the SEC has directed Georgia and Tennessee to not play their home-and-home non-conference series against Oklahoma. The Bulldogs had OU scheduled in 23 and 31. All right, so get rid of that 23 game. That's very interesting. The Vols' 2020 game in Norman was canceled amid COVID and was expected to be made up down the line. So there's a 23 game for Oklahoma, and they're telling Georgia, don't go play that game. So the immediate speculation was, all right, this is the SEC trying to clear the way, clear the runway to get Oklahoma and Texas into that conference next year. That was pretty immediately rebuffed by both Dennis Dodd and Brett McMurphy, a couple of other, obviously, national reporters here. Dennis Dodd said, sources, today's SEC Oklahoma scheduling announcement does not indicate movement on OU and Texas leaving the Big 12 early. That could happen, but this is not an indicator. Best guess, SEC close on its future scheduling structure and needs those Oklahoma, Georgia, Oklahoma, Tennessee games for competitive balance. So, yeah, the SEC seems to be pretty far ahead of the game when it comes to scheduling and getting all of that ironed out and ready to go. So this would be about that. Like, we need to make sure that we can schedule Oklahoma against Tennessee and Georgia like later on, not have to worry about these games being on the books in the non-conference schedule. Just wipe it clean, get rid of it, don't do it. Helping out, like, if Oklahoma just played Georgia in 23, are you going to then stick them playing Georgia in 2024? I'm guessing that kind of idea here. Brett McMurphy also said this. Brett McMurphy said the SEC has Georgia and Tennessee to postpone scheduled future home-and-home series with Oklahoma since the Sooners joining the SEC, and it would not have allowed the schools to fulfill both home-and-home non-conference games. So, yeah, both of those guys kind of dumped some water on the fire there for a second that everybody was having. Like, oh man, this may be happening. It does not appear that that's really what the issue is. I guess if you want to be conspiratorial and say, like, hey, Greg Sankey and company, maybe you're actually plotting something here, or hey, and honestly, this is one that I would be open to. If you're going to say, hey, Brett Yormark just said they're back into conversations with the TV networks here about trying to get something set up early and talking to the Big 12. And at the same time, now we see this, the SEC saying, hey, go ahead and just cancel those games. Maybe you could say, all right, Yormark's probably got that on the table, and that's something that they're talking about behind the scenes. Maybe so, but it seems like the reporting on this would indicate that right now this is not something to get too worked up and too terribly excited about. So that, I think, is the best answer that I could give you for right now, Boom to the Sooner, about where that's at. But we'll see. We'll see. We just have not, there's been so little like tangible information on any of that. I did see some Oklahoma folks still saying like, it's probably going to be 2024 today. So if you value, the Oklahoma kind of media response to it, that was what I was seeing, was that, no, it'll probably be 2024. Glenn, what's up, Glenn? Thank you for the donation. By the way, here, 5 to 10 minutes left with you. 5 to 10 minutes left. So this is the time. If you have something that you want to get on here, make sure that you get it in by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. It's how you donate. Get your question or comment in the chat. I will read it here on the channel. That is how you do so. Also, the way to support me and the work that I'm doing, bringing you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis here on the channel. Excuse me. Getting all worked up. And if you want to support me on Venmo, it's John-Kurtz-4 as well, if you're not watching this live. Glenn says Big 12 just keeps looking better and better. I would agree. Things looking pretty good in Big 12 country right now. At least relative, once again, to where it was just a little over a year ago, like 14 months ago. A lot of good things happening here in the league. Still very bullish on where Brett Yormark is going with this thing. And when the dust settles, I think the Big 12 is going to be in a better position than most people think or thought, certainly about the league. Blake, what's up, Blake? Blake, thank you for the donation. Blake says Craig Thompson is stepping down as the commissioner of the Mountain West effective December 31st. Is the Mountain West about to get gutted by the Pac? They might. I did see that. Craig Thompson, I know, is somebody who is very well respected and did a lot of fighting on the front of trying to get playoff access for the group of 5 schools and just access at the highest level for the group of 5 schools. So I know he's a well-respected guy throughout the college football world. I mean, I could understand why you would look at that and say, hey, he sees the writing on the wall. The Pac-12 is going to come for, whoever it might be, San Diego State, Boise State, whatever, Fresno State, whatever combination of teams you want to throw out there. I think it may just be more like he fought for so long to get access to the playoff, and now it's here. I mean, they have it. We have playoff expansion. The group of 5 is going to, in essence, with the 6 highest rated conference champions, have access to it. And so he's achieved a goal that he's been working toward for a long time there. The dynamics of the game have changed. These longtime administrators that are now having to deal with NIL and the transfer portal, it's a much different game than what they came into. So I can understand. I mean, it's kind of like Bob Bowlesby. He was saying, like, look, dude, I went through a pandemic. I went through NIL. I went through conference realignment. Exhausting. I just want to get out of here. So I would imagine it's probably a combination of like all of those things. I wouldn't think it's just because he thinks like, oh, we're going to get totally gutted here by the Pac-12. Because the thing with that is, and I know Marshawn, back to that, was saying the Pac-12 needs to strengthen its hand, but are you really strengthening it that much with schools from the Mountain West? I'm not sure. So I don't know if this is the death of the Mountain West yet or not. Robert, what's up, Robert? Thank you for the donation. Robert says Pac-12 to recruits. Your parents can watch you on Amazon and then see the Aeronauts. Watching KC and the Chargers isn't a barometer for Cal, Oregon State. Well, correct on that. It is definitely not a barometer for what would happen with Cal, Oregon State. I think the idea from John Wilner and tying that together with the article is more like just pay attention to what this broadcast looks like and how this goes this year in the NFL. Because if it doesn't go well, then obviously that's not going to bode well at all for college football being on there. But if it does, maybe that it gets people more comfortable with the idea of watching streaming on Amazon Prime. I think that would be kind of the general idea there with the tone. David, what's up, David? David says, Kurtz, just showing some support for catching your last few shows on replay. Thanks for the Big 12 focused content. Go Clones and come to Ames for KSU. Well, first of all, thank you for the support, sir. Appreciate that very much as always. Always love you being in here in the chat. I think there's a good chance I will be in Ames. So keep that in mind. I'll talk more about that as we get closer to the game. But since I'm not able to go to Norman, I do really want to go to Ames. Another place that I've been a bunch of times. Covered K-State games there in, we were in even number of years. That's right. Yeah. 2012 was the first. So we did 12, 14, 16, 18. Yeah. Been to Ames a number of times to watch games there. And I would love to go back again, especially this year. I think that could be a really good, really fun game between the two. So I'm going to try. That is kind of my plan right now. If I can find a nice little group to go with me, that is the idea. So we can more on that later. R Web, what's up, R Web? R Web says hundreds of millions apart. George kicking butt. You are right indeed, R Web. George kicking butt. George focusing on streaming. I wonder why George is focusing on streaming. Maybe it's because he's millions apart, hundreds of millions apart with ESPN as far as that deal goes. Hope B Izzo's kicking butt, R-Web. You think B Izzo's kicking butt this week? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to guess yes on that front. Pokes Fan 88. What's up, Pokes Fan 88? Pokes Fan 88 says, do out-of-conference games help conferences as a whole or only the schools playing? I.e., would Bedlam help everyone in the Big 12 if played in the future? Yes, I think it would help the Big 12 if played in the future. And this actually comes back to an issue. I don't think we've talked about this on this channel, but Texas Tech, I saw, basically used the media to kind of blow up the fact that they're frustrated with Chris Del Conte at Texas, feeling like he had committed to playing Texas Tech year in, year out when Texas left, and now is kind of reneging on that and pulling it back. And they're really frustrated with that. And that would be a great thing. As many times as you can get Texas and Oklahoma on TV against Big 12 schools and non-conference games, that will help the value of Big 12 TV deals. So yeah, if Oklahoma would agree to still play Bedlam every year, that is an extra game in the conference TV package where Oklahoma would be playing. And yes, it does add some value. So I think it's a very astute question that you asked there. And my answer would be yes, it definitely would help out everybody a little bit in terms, maybe not a ton, but at least just adding a little bit of extra value. And if you can get that as a non-conference game instead of Oklahoma State against even Arizona State from this past weekend, huge difference in terms of the TV interest there. I mean, just let me throw this out there at you. We saw the number. It was like over 3 million people watched Pitt and West Virginia. They may not, and look, I'm sorry, West Virginia fans, but both of those teams may not wind up being very good this year, but we knew about the rivalry. We knew how close they were. You got it on a good network because of that. And a lot of people watched. People would watch Oklahoma State. People would watch Texas Tech. So yes, I do think that would make a difference for everybody if those schools agree to it. The problem is, and this is why, like, my thing with the Tech and Texas bit was like, I don't know why Chris Del Conte would have ever floated the idea that he would agree with that, because I can't see Texas. They're going to have, the entire state of Texas will want to play them in non-conference games. They have history with a bunch of different schools. And I'm not trying to say Tech doesn't have less history. Tech may be the best out of that bunch in terms of the history and all that, and who should play them. But Texas is going to have options there. Maybe they want to rotate. I just would not have expected them to commit to one person, one school there. But if they did, that's a pretty crappy move then to be pulling back on it here. But would it honestly surprise anybody if Texas is doing something a little sleazy as far as that goes? I think nobody here would be shocked. Matthew, what's up, Matthew? Matthew says, Big 12 looked great last week. Can't see an argument for Big 10 SEC superiority. Remove their top two teams and our bottom 90% greater than theirs. Guns up. Well, hey, guns up. But I would just say, the problem is that the top two they're pretty big too. They're massive up at the top. And really with the Big 10, this year, we'll see about Michigan, I guess. But Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, maybe to a lesser extent like LSU. They're massive and they make a huge difference and they win a lot up at the top. But I think your point about the rest of the leagues, yes, I would throw the rest of the leagues up against basically anybody there. I think that they could handle. That's why it's so frustrating. Like this is fresh in my mind, obviously, right now, but the Mizzous of the world chirping, like, guys, you bring nothing to the SEC. You're a punching bag, and the rest of the schedule that you play outside of Alabama, Georgia is not something that Big 12 teams could not handle. I think, as obviously was proven this weekend with K-State playing like a C game and winning 40-12 and should have been 40-6 if not for a late roughing the passer penalty and a timeout with like 5 seconds left by Drinkwitz to score that last touchdown. So I get the point that you're making for sure. Eric, what's up, Eric? Eric says, can't wait for Baylor, Oklahoma State. It will really set the tone for the top of the conference. Go Pokes. That'll be a fun game, no doubt. It'll be a fun game. When do we have that game? Let's see. Let's see what the first week of the conference schedule looks like. We got K-State, Oklahoma, Baylor at Iowa State. Man, that should be a hell of a game. Then TCU, SMU, and Texas Tech. Oh, Texas got to go to Tech next week. Well, whew, give me a September 24th. I'm excited for this weekend too, but that's a good weekend of interesting games. But Eric, to be frank with you, I'm kind of still there. I think Oklahoma State and Baylor obviously will play a factor in the Big 12 title race. So definitely understand the excitement there for that game, no doubt. Juan, what's up, Juan? Juan says, go Cougs. Missed the past few live streams. Congrats to Reckham. Not feeling great about KU this week. Go Big 12. Juan, that seems to be a pretty consistent theme. We've heard from some Houston fans throughout the chat here today. They were all very gracious, by the way, in defeat. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name, but somebody earlier who was a Houston fan who said the same thing, like not feeling real great about KU this week. So it'll be tricky, man. I'm telling you, I don't think anybody in that spot would be feeling really great about it right now. And that is a world of respect being paid to Lance Leipold in Kansas. Deservedly so. Deservedly so. They have earned it. They have earned it. And Matthew says A&M and Texas Tech have by far the most heat with Texas. Makes sense. And yeah, obviously, A&M, I don't even, we haven't even talked about A&M. I don't like the internet is just now like finding out this is Texas A&M. The worst thing that's happened for Texas A&M is joining the SEC and then having the internet like exist and social media exist in terms of exposing what a weird cult that place is. Like, and I knew all this stuff. I remember when K-State first went to A&M in 96, a lot of people talking about, and K-State won that game, by the way, when A&M like never lost at home. I remember a lot of people talking about how excited they were to go to Midnight Yell and see all that and like the tradition of it. And I was aware of it, but I had never really seen it until they've been live streaming it lately. And now it's making it to Twitter. I mean, my God, it's a cult, dude. It is a weird cult. And so, yeah, they've got their history. They're going to play. I don't know who I guess I'm rooting for A&M there, when they start playing Texas again, but boy, just a bunch of on both sides of that thing, man. But yeah, so I remember that. By the way, you're throwing A&M and Texas Tech together there. I missed the A&M Texas Tech games. I mean, speaking of some heats, I can remember those games from back in the good old Big 12 days. A lot of heat there between A&M and Texas Tech. Like that's again, these games that we are robbed of because of conference realignment. I mean, who wouldn't love to watch A&M and Texas Tech right now? Robert, thank you, Robert. Glad that you threw this in here. Need positive vibes for Tech to upset NC State. I like Tech to upset NC State this weekend. I'm feeling more confident about that. ACC football does absolutely nothing for me. NC State did not look impressive in Greenville, North Carolina against East Carolina earlier this year. I'm going to call my shot there and say that Tech will win that game. Give it to me, Joey McGuire. Go get and that would be a huge win because people are really high on NC State. They were an offseason darling. People really are trying to will them to be good this year. And my bias is in play here that I don't have a lot of respect for the ACC minus Clemson. And even Clemson, I'm thinking is starting to backslide a little bit from being elite to just very good. So yeah, I'm here for it, Robert. There's your positive vibes. Guns up, go get NC State. Let's all enjoy Texas Tech beating NC State. Let's all enjoy BYU beating Oregon this weekend, huh? How about that too? How about that? Matthew says, "Remember Tech or horse's butt at A&M." I don't know. Am I missing something there? Remember Tech or horse's butt at A&M? The one story I remember from that game is like the Tech fans made the Michael Vick shirts with Reveille. I remember that. I definitely remember that. Wasn't there like a fight in the stands one year too? Those are some of the things that come to mind when I think of A&M Tech. Delarick. What's up, Delarick? Delarick says, I'm old enough to remember when Texas A&M and Baylor was heater. Had some heat with it. Yeah, hey, would love to watch that too. I mean, who would Baylor? Good Lord. If Baylor had been playing A&M over the last 10 years, I mean, what would that series would be like 8-2 Baylor, I mean, A&M, the best 7-5 or 8-4 that money can buy. Baylor would have some nice wins in that series. And again, robbed of it because of conference realignment. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. Oh, I see. Matthew says, we faced our campus statue, which is a horse at A&M. Okay. Got it. Thank you for the clarification, Matthew. Thank you for the clarification. All right. I'm exhausted, guys. I need to go get something to eat and get to bed early morning tomorrow. But thank you for being here. Thanks for hanging out in the chat tonight. Again, it's John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you're watching this taped and you want to support the channel. Follow me on Twitter at JLKurtz. Hit me up in the DMs. I try to be fairly responsive there too. If you would like to get in touch with me, spread the word about the channel. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell whoever, fellow Big 12 fans, fellow fans of your school. Post it on social media, blast it everywhere. Let's continue to grow this channel and grow this community. I appreciate you guys so much and all the support. Thank you for being here. Let's enjoy a weekend of football, and I will talk to you guys soon.